It was one of those crisp Saturday mornings where the air smelled faintly of cut grass, coffee, and the distant hum of someone's leaf blower 2 streets over. I had just come back from a 3-week work trip overseas, and honestly, all I wanted was to sleep in, unpack at my own pace, and maybe finally take my new car for a drive, the one I had saved up for almost 5 years to buy. It was a silver 2024 Lexus S500, the kind of sleek, understated luxury that turned heads without screaming for attention. The dealership had delivered it late the night before, parking it carefully in my garage next to my old SUV. I hadn't even removed the protective plastic from the seats yet. As far as I was concerned, today was about groceries, a car wash, and a quiet afternoon. But I lived in the Cedar Pines community, an HOA neighborhood, which meant quiet was never guaranteed. I had been in Cedar Pines for 4 years now, and while most of my neighbors were friendly enough, we had one notorious resident, Karen. That wasn't her actual name, but everyone, and I mean everyone, called her that. Early on, I'd learned she was the self-appointed neighborhood watchdog, the unofficial enforcer of HOA rules, and someone who treated every driveway, garden, and mailbox as if it was her personal jurisdiction. She had a talent for manufacturing drama where none existed. If your trash cans were visible for more than an hour after pickup, she'd photograph them and email the HOA board. If your lawn grew a 1/4 inch too long, she'd, accidentally, wander onto your property to measure it with a tape measure she kept in her fanny pack. Rumor had it she'd called the cops on a teenager once for suspiciously skateboarding past her house. My strategy had always been simple: stay off her radar. But as I was about to find out, that plan was about to crumble spectacularly. Around 9:30 a.m., I stepped into my garage, coffee mug in hand, ready to finally see my car in daylight. I pressed the garage door button, the motor whirring as sunlight spilled across the concrete floor. The silver Lexus shimmered, still smelling faintly of the dealership showroom. I admired it for maybe 2 seconds before I noticed movement in my peripheral vision. Across the street, Karen stood on her front lawn in sweatpants and a faded, "World's Best Grandma" t-shirt, her arms crossed. She was staring at my garage like she'd just caught me burying a body. I tried to ignore it, sipped my coffee, and got into the driver's seat to check the electronics. But before I could even start the ignition, I heard her shrill voice pierce the morning air like a fire alarm. "Thief! Thief!" she screamed, pointing directly at me. At first, I thought maybe she'd spotted someone behind me. I even turned around, expecting to see some stranger in my garage. Nope, she was looking right at me, eyes wide with outrage, face red enough to match a stop sign. What happened next unfolded so fast it felt like I was trapped in one of those viral YouTube videos entitled People Gone Wild. Karen stomped down her driveway, phone pressed to her ear, yelling loud enough for the entire street to hear, "I'm looking at him right now. He's stealing a car from that house. No, the silver Lexus, it's brand new. I told you he doesn't live here. No, I don't care what paperwork he waves at me. Just get here before he drives away." My jaw literally dropped. She was calling 911. I tried to interject, but she just shushed me with the kind of dismissive hand gesture you'd give to a barking dog. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice calm, "this is my car. I have the purchase receipt, the title, the key." She cut me off, stepping onto my driveway like she owned the place. "Save it for the police, criminal," she sneered. And, sure enough, within 6 minutes, the fastest I'd ever seen them respond to anything in Cedar Pines, 2 patrol cars rolled up, lights flashing. The neighbors started coming out with their phones, recording, because apparently, I was now the main character in this morning's neighborhood spectacle. The 2 officers stepped out of their cruisers with that calm but serious demeanor you see in TV shows, hands resting on their belts, eyes scanning the scene. One was tall and broad-shouldered, probably in his early 30s, the other younger but with the same no-nonsense expression. Karen immediately rushed toward them like a prosecutor delivering her closing argument. "There he is," she shouted, jabbing her finger toward me. "That's the man who just stole my car. Arrest him before he takes off." The taller officer glanced at me, then at the Lexus, then back at her. "Ma'am, slow down," he said evenly. "Can you explain exactly what happened?" That was all the invitation she needed. She launched into an Oscar-worthy performance about how she had just purchased a brand new silver Lexus that was supposed to be delivered to her driveway this morning. But instead, she caught me loading it up in my garage. She sprinkled in phrases like, professional thief, and, I know my rights, for dramatic effect, all while ignoring the fact that the car had never been anywhere near her property. When they finally turned to me, I handed over the folder I'd grabbed from my kitchen the moment I saw the patrol cars arrive. Inside was everything: the dealership invoice with my name, the financing paperwork, the temporary registration, and the delivery receipt signed just last night. The younger officer flipped through them methodically while the taller one walked around the car, checking the VIN against my paperwork. Meanwhile, Karen stood behind them, arms folded, muttering loud enough for everyone to hear, "You can fake paperwork, you know. Criminals do it all the time." I could feel my patience thinning, but I kept my tone steady. "Officers," I said, "this is my property, purchased legally. I've never even spoken to this woman before today. I have no idea why she's accusing me of theft." The younger officer glanced at me, then at her, with a look that said he already knew who was lying. But Karen wasn't about to go down without a fight. When the officers told her the VIN matched my documents, she switched tactics instantly. "Fine," she snapped, "maybe he bought it, but it was meant for me. The dealership must have made a mistake. My son works in sales there, this is clearly my order." She turned to me, glaring like I'd kicked her puppy. "You're going to hand over those keys, right now, or I'll sue you for grand theft." The sheer absurdity made me laugh out loud, which only fueled her fury. The taller officer finally stepped in. "Ma'am, unless you have proof this vehicle belongs to you, I suggest you step back and let us finish here." That's when she made her biggest mistake of the morning. She tried to grab the keys from my hand. Reflexively, I pulled them back, and the officers immediately moved between us. One of them said firmly, "Ma'am, that's enough." The neighborhood gasped collectively, a few people actually clapping from across the street. The situation might have ended there if Karen had just walked away, but Karen wasn't wired for backing down. She crossed her arms and said, "I want him trespassed from my property. He was in my garage." That made both officers stop and exchange glances. The younger one raised an eyebrow. "Your garage?" She pointed, confidently, like she had just scored a checkmate, at my open garage door. "Yes, that one, my property." At that point, I realized exactly what was happening. She didn't just think the car was hers, she was trying to claim my entire house. And that's when I decided I was done playing defense. "Officers," I said, "I have my deed and mortgage paperwork inside, if you'd like to verify ownership of the property as well." The taller officer gave a slow nod. "Yeah," he said, "I think that would be a good idea." Meanwhile, Karen's smirk started to flicker, like maybe she'd just realized she'd taken this charade a step too far. I led the officers inside while Karen stayed outside, pacing on my driveway like a shark circling prey. I made sure to leave the garage door wide open so she could see exactly where I was going. No disappearing act, no tampering with evidence, nonsense she could twist into another accusation. From my home office, I pulled out the thick leather binder where I kept every important document: the property deed, the mortgage statements, the WA welcome packet from when I bought the house, and even the title from my old SUV. I brought it all back out to the driveway, where the younger officer started flipping through the papers carefully. "This shows you've owned this property for 4 years, he said, looking at Karen now. "Do you have any documentation showing this as your address?" She fumbled with her phone, muttering something about not needing to prove anything because everyone knows she's the WA secretary. That was my cue. "Actually," I said, projecting my voice so the cluster of neighbors filming could hear, "I happen to have an HOA directory right here. Let's see." I flipped through until I found Karen's name, highlighted under a completely different street, 3 blocks away. "Looks like you don't even live on this street, Karen." The gasps from the peanut gallery were priceless. The taller officer glanced at her with a raised brow, clearly unimpressed. "Ma'am, is that true?" She immediately launched into a rambling explanation about extended property rights and adjacent oversight, which made about as much legal sense as claiming the moon belonged to her because she could see it from her yard. The younger officer, now visibly tired of her nonsense, said flatly, "Ma'am, unless you have a legal document tying you to this address or vehicle, you need to stop interfering." But instead of backing down, Karen switched gears again, and this time, she dragged the WA into it. "The WA rules give me authority over this property," she declared, chin lifted like she was reciting royal decree. "I told him weeks ago that he couldn't have a flashy new sports car in this neighborhood without board approval. It attracts crime. Her voice cracked on the word, crime, which was ironic, considering she was the one committing harassment and making false police reports. The taller officer turned to me. "Sir, is this an HOA community?" I nodded. "Yes, but my car is completely compliant with the bylaws, and I can prove it." I dug back into my binder and pulled out the HOA vehicle policy, highlighting the part that allowed personal passenger vehicles without board approval. The officer read it, then looked at Karen. "Ma'am, this clearly states he's in compliance. Why exactly did you call 911? That was the breaking point." Karen's voice rose another octave. "Because I knew he was up to something. He never talks to anyone, he's always traveling for work, and now suddenly there's a brand new car in his garage. It doesn't add up." The younger officer sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Ma'am, having a new car isn't a crime. Accusing someone of theft without evidence is a crime, and interfering with law enforcement is another." Karen's face went pale, and I could see the first flicker of panic in her eyes. For the first time all morning, she actually stopped talking. The officers stepped aside to speak, quietly to each other while I stood there in silence, neighbors whispering behind their camera phones. I didn't know it yet, but things were about to escalate beyond just clearing my name, because the officers had just radioed in something that made Karen's whole morning blow up in her face. The taller officer returned from the patrol car with a new, sharper tone in his voice. "Ma'am, can you step over here for a moment?" Karen straightened her shoulders like she was finally going to get her big, "arrest the thief" moment, but then I saw the younger officer subtly shift his stance between her and me, and I knew something was different. "We just ran your name through our system," the taller one continued, "and it appears there's an outstanding bench warrant for your arrest." The collective gasp from the neighbors could have sucked the air out of the entire cul-de-sac. Karen blinked, clearly caught off guard, then laughed nervously. That can't be right. Must be a mistake." But the officer's expression didn't change. "It's for failure to appear in court regarding a code violation, unpaid fines and harassment complaints. Does that ring a bell?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish, but no words came out. The younger officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm placing you under arrest. Please turn around and put your hands behind your back." That's when the screaming started. "This is harassment. This is a setup. He called you to frame me," she shrieked, jerking her head toward me. But the moment the cuffs clicked, her power melted away. The same woman who had stormed onto my driveway calling me a thief was now being walked to the squad car in front of the same audience she had summoned. The neighbors, those same ones who had been recording the entire time, didn't hold back. Someone muttered, "About time," while another called out, "Guess you'll have to measure your lawn from jail." I stood there holding my paperwork and keys, feeling an overwhelming mix of relief and satisfaction. The officers handed me back my documents and apologized for the inconvenience. Though I told them they had nothing to apologize for, they'd handled it professionally. The taller one even said, "We've had a few calls from her before." This isn't surprising. That explained the speed of their arrival earlier. As the cruiser pulled away with Karen still shouting from the backseat, I could see her face pressed to the window, mouthing something I couldn't hear, probably another wild accusation. I just gave a little wave, which made her thrash even harder. The moment the cars turned the corner, the cul-de-sac erupted into chatter, people coming over to shake my hand, some showing me the footage they'd captured. The HOA's vice president, who lived 2 doors down, even said quietly, "I'll be bringing this up at the next meeting. We've let her run unchecked for too long." By the time I closed my garage door again, the street had returned to normal, or as normal as Cedar Pines ever got. My Lexus gleamed under the dim garage light, innocent as the day it rolled off the lot. I finally took that deep breath I'd been waiting for since morning, the kind you take when the storm has finally passed. The best part, 2 days later, an official HOA email went out stating that Karen had been removed from the board and barred from holding any leadership role in the community. The icing on the cake came when I learned she'd be spending a few nights in county jail before paying off her fines. As far as I was concerned, justice had been served, and all I had to do to get it was open my garage door.